For years, Ellen DeGeneres seemed untouchable. She wasn't just another celebrity, she was America's favorite daytime host, the woman who ended every episode with one simple message: be kind to one another. Millions of viewers embraced that image. Hollywood celebrated it. Guests lined up to appear on her stage, and audiences believed they knew exactly who Ellen was. But sometimes the image people see on television isn't the whole story. Almost overnight, that carefully crafted reputation began to unravel. One awkward interview exploded across social media. Former employees started sharing stories from behind the scenes. Headlines piled up faster than anyone could keep track of, and suddenly, the woman who had built an empire around kindness found herself defending accusations that painted a very different picture. Then, years after her show ended, the conversation returned all over again. Comedian Rob Schneider publicly criticized Ellen's response to the controversy. Journalist Megyn Kelly argued that Ellen never truly accepts responsibility. Meanwhile, online communities revived older celebrity interviews, revisited workplace allegations, and even connected unrelated tragedies to Ellen, despite investigators finding no evidence to support many of those theories. So, what actually happened? How did one of the most successful television personalities in history go from daytime royalty to one of Hollywood's most debated figures? And after everything that's happened, is a comeback still possible, or has the damage become permanent? Let's take a closer look. Long before the controversy, Ellen's story looked almost impossible. She started as a stand-up comedian in the early 1980s, gradually building a reputation with observational humor that felt relatable instead of outrageous. While many comedians relied on shock value, Ellen's style was conversational and approachable, making her stand out in a crowded industry. Her breakthrough came with television sitcoms and national comedy appearances, but one moment changed entertainment history forever. In 1997, both Ellen and her sitcom character publicly came out as gay. At the time, it was one of the biggest moments television had ever seen. The episode attracted enormous attention and became a landmark in pop culture. While many praised her courage, the decision also came with consequences. Advertisers pulled away, ratings declined, and opportunities in Hollywood became much harder to find. For several years, Ellen openly spoke about feeling isolated within the industry. Then came the comeback nobody expected. In 2003, The Ellen DeGeneres Show premiered. Instead of focusing on controversy, Ellen reinvented herself completely. The new version of Ellen danced through the audience, surprised everyday people with life-changing gifts, interviewed the biggest celebrities on the planet, and ended every episode encouraging viewers to choose kindness. That message became more than a catchphrase, it became her entire brand. Over nearly 2 decades, the show collected dozens of awards, attracted some of the biggest names in entertainment, and turned Ellen into one of television's highest-paid personalities. Her influence expanded far beyond daytime TV, with best-selling books, voice acting roles, massive endorsement deals, and a thriving real estate portfolio. To millions of viewers, Ellen represented optimism, which is exactly why what happened next shocked so many people. Because the first crack in that carefully built image didn't come from an investigation. It came from a birthday party. For years, Ellen's reputation seemed almost impossible to shake. Sure, there had been occasional stories about difficult interactions behind the scenes, but they rarely gained any real traction. Most people dismiss them as rumors that naturally follow someone that famous. As far as the public was concerned, Ellen was still the smiling host who danced onto the stage every afternoon. Then, in November 2019, one interview changed the conversation almost overnight. Actress Dakota Johnson appeared on The Ellen DeGeneres Show to promote her latest project. At first, everything seemed completely normal. The audience laughed, the conversation flowed, and nothing suggested the interview would become one of the most replayed television clips of the decade. Then Ellen casually joked that Dakota hadn't invited her to a recent birthday party. It sounded harmless, but Dakota didn't laugh. Instead, she calmly replied, "Actually, no, that's not the truth, Ellen. You were invited." For a brief moment, the atmosphere in the studio completely changed. Ellen appeared surprised and quickly tried to explain that she must have forgotten the invitation. Dakota, however, doubled down, reminding her that the invitation had been sent and that Ellen had chosen not to attend. The exchange lasted less than a minute, but on the internet, that minute became everything. Within hours, the clip was everywhere. Millions of people watched it over and over, analyzing every facial expression, every awkward pause, and every attempt to recover the conversation. What had originally been intended as a lighthearted joke suddenly looked, to many viewers, like Ellen had been caught making a claim that wasn't accurate. More importantly, something unexpected happened. People started looking backward. Social media users began digging through years of old interviews, searching for moments they had overlooked before. Conversations that once seemed playful were suddenly being viewed through a completely different lens. One interview kept resurfacing more than any other. Back in 2008, singer Mariah Carey appeared on Ellen's show while rumors circulated that she might be pregnant. Mariah hadn't publicly confirmed anything and repeatedly tried to avoid discussing the speculation. Instead of moving on, Ellen continued pressing the subject. At one point, she even handed Mariah a glass of champagne, joking that refusing to drink it would only fuel the rumors. Mariah looked visibly uncomfortable. She laughed nervously, tried changing the subject, and never directly answered the question. At the time, many viewers dismissed the moment as awkward daytime television. Years later, however, the clip took on a far more serious meaning after Mariah revealed that she had been pregnant during the interview, but later suffered a miscarriage. She later explained that being pressured to address such a private matter publicly had been deeply uncomfortable. The resurfaced interview prompted many viewers to ask a difficult question: had Ellen crossed a line? Then another viral clip entered the conversation. Fans revisited Ellen's interviews with Taylor Swift, pointing to moments where the singer appeared uncomfortable while being teased about her dating life. Although the segments were originally presented as playful entertainment, critics argued that repeatedly putting guests on the spot for laughs could feel unnecessarily personal. One video became two became 10. Soon, online compilations titled The Moments We Missed or Ellen's Most Awkward Interviews were spreading across YouTube, TikTok, and X. Each new clip reinforced the growing perception that something about Ellen's on-screen persona no longer matched the image audiences had believed for years. Whether every criticism was fair became almost secondary. Public perception had shifted, and once that shift began, it became nearly impossible to stop, because while viewers were re-examining old interviews, another group of people decided it was finally time to tell their own stories. Former employees and what they claimed was happening behind the cameras would create a controversy far bigger than any viral interview ever could. The Dakota Johnson interview may have changed public opinion, but it didn't end Ellen's career, at least not immediately. For a few months, the viral clips came and went like countless celebrity controversies before them. Many people assumed the internet would eventually move on. Instead, something much bigger happened. In the summer of 2020, former employees of the Ellen DeGeneres show began publicly describing what they said life behind the scenes was really like. Their accounts painted a workplace that looked nothing like the cheerful atmosphere viewers saw on television every afternoon. According to multiple reports, several current and former staff members alleged they had experienced bullying, intimidation, and an environment they described as toxic. Others claimed they had faced discrimination or felt uncomfortable raising concerns because they feared retaliation. The stories spread quickly. What made the situation especially significant wasn't just one allegation, it was the number of people speaking up around the same time. Suddenly, outlets across the entertainment industry were covering the controversy, and what had started as internet chatter had become a major corporate issue. The pressure grew so intense that Warner Media, the company behind the Ellen DeGeneres show, launched an internal investigation into the workplace. That marked a turning point. This was no longer just a debate on social media. There was now an official investigation examining complaints from employees about the culture behind one of television's biggest shows. As investigators interviewed current and former staff members, more details emerged in the press. While many of the allegations focused on senior producers rather than Ellen personally, critics argued that, as the face of the show, she ultimately bore responsibility for the environment created under her leadership. Others disagreed. Supporters pointed out that large productions involve hundreds of employees and multiple layers of management. They questioned whether it was realistic to expect one host to know everything happening behind the scenes. The debate quickly split public opinion. Was Ellen personally responsible? Or had executives beneath her created problems she wasn't fully aware of? Eventually, the investigation led to major changes. Several senior producers left the show following the findings. While Warner Media announced changes aimed at improving the workplace culture, then came the moment millions of viewers had been waiting for. Ellen addressed the controversy herself. When the show returned for its new season, she opened with an emotional monologue. She acknowledged that serious problems had existed within the workplace and apologized to those who had been affected. She also accepted responsibility as the show's leader, saying that because her name was on the program, she understood that responsibility ultimately rested with her. For some viewers, the apology was sincere. They believed Ellen deserved credit for addressing the issue publicly and committing to change, but others weren't convinced. Critics argued the response came only after months of negative headlines and corporate pressure. Some former employees later said they felt the apology focused more on protecting the show's reputation than on fully acknowledging what they had experienced. As the debate intensified, older stories began resurfacing online. Former guests recalled uncomfortable moments. Restaurant employees shared personal anecdotes. Social media users collected years of rumors into lengthy threads, creating the impression that the workplace allegations were part of a much larger pattern. It's important to note that not every story circulating online was independently verified. Many accounts remained personal claims that could not be confirmed, while others were contradicted or lacked supporting evidence. Yet, in the court of public opinion, the sheer volume of stories made them difficult for many people to ignore. For the first time in nearly 2 decades, Ellen's carefully crafted image seemed impossible to control. And just when it looked like the controversy might finally begin fading, some of Hollywood's biggest personalities started weighing in. Instead of dying down, the conversation entered an entirely new phase, one fueled by celebrity opinions, podcast interviews, and a Netflix comeback that reignited the debate all over again. By the time the Ellen DeGeneres show aired its final episode in 2022, it felt like the chapter had finally closed. After 19 seasons, thousands of celebrity interviews, and countless viral moments, one of television's most recognizable daytime shows was officially over. For a while, Ellen mostly stayed out of the spotlight. She made only occasional public appearances, spent more time focusing on her real estate projects with her wife, Portia de Rossi, and seemed content stepping away from the daily attention that had defined nearly 2 decades of her life. Many assumed she'd quietly retire. But Hollywood comebacks have a way of happening when people least expect them. In 2024, Ellen returned with a Netflix stand-up special, hoping to tell her side of the story and perhaps remind audiences why they had fallen in love with her comedy in the first place. Instead, the special reopened old wounds. Throughout the performance, Ellen joked about the controversy that had surrounded her for years. She poked fun at headlines, referenced the backlash she'd faced, and joked about being labeled mean. To some viewers, it was classic stand-up, using humor to process difficult experiences, but to others, something felt missing. Critics argued that instead of reflecting on what had happened, Ellen was treating the scandal as though she'd simply become the latest victim of internet culture. That criticism gained even more attention after journalist Megyn Kelly discussed the special on her show. Kelly argued that Ellen appeared to be portraying herself as someone who had been unfairly pushed out of Hollywood rather than someone confronting legitimate criticism. She questioned whether a celebrity with an enormously successful career major streaming deals, and substantial wealth could genuinely claim to have been canceled. The comments quickly spread across social media. Then comedian Rob Schneider joined the conversation. While Schneider criticized Ellen's response to the controversy, he also made a broader point. He suggested that people are capable of changing, but that meaningful reconciliation usually starts with genuine humility and accountability. In his view, the issue wasn't whether Ellen deserved forgiveness. It was whether audiences believed she'd truly acknowledged the concerns that had damaged her reputation in the first place. That distinction mattered, because by this point, public opinion had become deeply divided. One side argued that Ellen had apologized years earlier and had become the target of relentless online criticism. They believed she'd spent decades entertaining millions and deserved the opportunity to move forward. The other side believed the Netflix special confirmed their biggest criticism, that Ellen still didn't fully understand why so many former employees and viewers had been disappointed in the first place. Neither side seemed willing to budge, and as clips from the special circulated online, another trend emerged. People weren't just discussing Ellen's jokes. They were revisiting nearly every controversial moment of her career. Old interviews resurfaced again. The workplace allegations returned to the headlines. Even stories from decades earlier started gaining new attention. It was as though the internet had decided to reopen the entire case from the beginning, but then something else happened. As online communities searched for more answers, the discussion took an unexpected turn. Instead of focusing only on verified events, countless theories began spreading across YouTube, TikTok, and discussion forums, connecting Ellen to tragedies and events that official investigations never linked together. Some of those theories attracted millions of views. Others blurred the line between documented facts and pure speculation. And that's where the story becomes far more complicated. As the dust settled around the workplace controversy, a different kind of conversation started taking over the internet. This time, it wasn't being driven by former employees or television critics. It was being fueled by online investigators across YouTube, Reddit, TikTok, and discussion forums. Creators began connecting unrelated events, revisiting old interviews, and asking whether there was an even bigger story hiding beneath the surface. Some of those videos attracted millions of views, but separating documented facts from internet speculation quickly became more important than ever. One of the biggest topics centered around Ellen's former partner, actress Anne Heche. The two were one of Hollywood's most talked about couples in the late 1990s. At a time when same-sex relationships were rarely embraced by mainstream entertainment, they frequently made headlines together. Their relationship ended in 2000. For years afterward, both largely moved on with their lives. But decades later, Anne spoke publicly about the relationship again, offering a much more complicated perspective than many fans had previously heard. In several interviews, Anne suggested that their priorities had eventually grown apart. She described wanting a different kind of life and claimed their relationship had become increasingly difficult before they separated. Those comments immediately reignited public interest in one of Hollywood's most famous former couples. Then, in August 2022, tragedy struck. Anne Heche was involved in a devastating car crash in Los Angeles. After suffering severe injuries, she passed away several days later. Authorities conducted a full investigation into the accident. The official findings concluded that the crash was accidental. Investigators did not determine that foul play was involved. For most people, that should have been the end of the story, but online, it became the beginning of another one. Almost immediately, social media filled with theories attempting to connect Anne's death to her past relationship with Ellen. Videos dissected surveillance footage, analyzed witness statements, and pointed to isolated details they believed raised unanswered questions. Some creators even suggested there had been an organized effort to silence Anne. Those claims spread rapidly. However, despite millions of views and countless online discussions, no credible evidence has emerged to support those allegations. The official investigation has never linked Ellen or anyone else to Anne Heche's death. Still, Once a conspiracy theory begins circulating online, it often develops a life of its own. And Anne wasn't the only person whose passing became the subject of internet speculation. Just a few months later, another heartbreaking loss shook the entertainment world. Stephen Twitch Boss, known to millions as a talented dancer, DJ, and television personality, Twitch had become one of the most recognizable faces on The Ellen DeGeneres Show. Over the years, he evolved from guest DJ to executive producer and was widely admired by colleagues and fans alike. In December 2022, news broke that Twitch had died at the age of 40. The loss stunned Hollywood. Following an investigation, authorities concluded that his death was self-inflicted, and officials reported finding no evidence of foul play. Friends, family, and fellow entertainers shared emotional tributes, remembering him as someone who brought warmth and positivity to those around him. Ellen herself released a heartfelt statement calling him family and expressing how deeply she would miss him. Yet once again, the internet took the story in a different direction. Because of Twitch's close association with Ellen during the workplace controversy, some online creators began suggesting there was more to the story than investigators had concluded. Those theories spread rapidly across social media. But just like the speculation surrounding Anne Heche, no credible evidence has been presented to contradict the official findings. It's a reminder of how quickly speculation can fill the space left by tragedy, especially when it involves famous people. By this point, Ellen had become a lightning rod for almost every conversation surrounding her career: verified controversies, personal opinions, old interviews, rumors, and completely unproven conspiracy theories. For many viewers, they all blended together. That may have been the biggest challenge Ellen faced, not just rebuilding her reputation, but convincing people to separate documented facts from stories that simply gain traction online. Meanwhile, Ellen herself was making a decision that surprised many in Hollywood. Instead of fighting to reclaim her place in the spotlight, she quietly started building a life somewhere else. By the end of The Ellen DeGeneres Show in 2022, it was clear that an era of television had come to an end. For nearly 2 decades, Ellen had been one of the most recognizable faces in daytime entertainment. Her set had become a stop for A-list celebrities, viral surprises, and unforgettable moments that millions of people watched every afternoon. Now those cameras were off, unlike many television personalities who immediately launch another talk show or jump into a new project. Ellen largely disappeared from Hollywood's daily spotlight. Instead, reports suggested she and her wife, Portia de Rossi, were spending more time focusing on a quieter life away from Los Angeles. The couple, already well known for buying, renovating, and selling luxury homes, continued investing in real estate while keeping a much lower public profile than they had during Ellen's television years. Then came another surprise. In late 2024, multiple outlets reported that Ellen and Portia had relocated to the United Kingdom, settling into the English countryside. The move sparked plenty of speculation. Some believed they simply wanted more privacy after years of relentless media attention. Others wondered if Ellen was intentionally distancing herself from Hollywood after one of the biggest reputation crises of her career. Neither Ellen nor Portia framed the move as an escape. Publicly, it appeared to be a lifestyle decision, one that offered more peace and less attention than life in Los Angeles. Even so, the timing fueled more discussion online. For critics, the relocation symbolized the end of Ellen's dominance in American entertainment. For supporters, it represented someone choosing a quieter chapter after decades in one of the most demanding industries in the world. Meanwhile, rumors about a professional comeback never completely disappeared. Because despite everything that had happened, Ellen still had one thing many entertainers lose after a public scandal: recognition. Her voice as Dory in Pixar's Finding Nemo and Finding Dory remains one of the most beloved animated performances of the past 2 decades. Every so often, reports surface suggesting she could return for future Pixar-related projects or other voice work. Whether those reports become reality remains to be seen. But they raise an interesting question. Can audiences separate an artist from the controversy surrounding them? Hollywood has seen countless comeback stories before. Robert Downey Jr. rebuilt his career after years of personal struggles. Winona Ryder returned after spending years away from major roles. Even other television personalities who faced intense public criticism have eventually found new audiences. The difference with Ellen is that her controversy wasn't centered around one incident. It challenged the very image that made her famous. Her brand wasn't built around being the funniest comedian or the biggest actress or the most successful producer. It was built around one simple promise, Kentness. That's why the backlash resonated so deeply with viewers. Whether people believed every allegation or not, many felt that the public image they'd trusted for years no longer matched the stories emerging behind the scenes. For others, however, the reaction went too far. They argue that one of television's longest and most successful careers became defined by its final chapter, overshadowing decades of charitable work, groundbreaking achievements, and moments that genuinely inspired millions. Even today, opinions remain sharply divided. Ask one person about Ellen DeGeneres, and they'll remember the comedian who broke barriers, made history, and changed daytime television forever. Ask someone else, and they'll immediately think of the workplace controversy that transformed her public image almost overnight. Both perspectives now exist side by side, and that may ultimately become Ellen's legacy. Not one version of the story, but two, Hollywood has always been built on image. Sometimes those images last forever. Sometimes they disappear almost overnight. For Ellen DeGeneres, it took decades to become one of the most trusted names on television. Yet, in just a few years, that reputation faced a level of scrutiny few celebrities ever experience. Some of the criticism was rooted in documented investigations and public statements. Some came from personal experiences shared by former employees and guests, and some evolved into internet theories that went far beyond anything supported by official evidence. Together, they reshaped how millions of people viewed one of television's biggest stars. Today, Ellen lives a much quieter life, far removed from the daily spotlight that once defined her career. Whether she eventually returns to Hollywood or chooses to remain out of it, one thing is certain. Her story has become a reminder of how quickly public opinion can change and how difficult it is to rebuild trust once it's been lost. But the final verdict doesn't belong to Hollywood, it doesn't belong to critics, and it doesn't belong to social media. It belongs to the audience. So, what do you think? Was Ellen unfairly judged by the internet? Or did the controversy simply reveal a side of her the public had never seen before? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this breakdown and want more deep dives into Hollywood's biggest controversies, don't forget to like the video, subscribe, and turn on notifications because the next story is even more unbelievable.